My name is Dustin Marks, and I was interested in magic from 7 years old, specifically card magic. And about after I graduated college from the Midwest, I went searching for the best cardmen in the country. And from the books I read, a bunch of them lived in Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, I've always had a fascination with gambling in Las Vegas, so in 1983, I moved to Las Vegas, Nevada from the Midwest. Didn't know a person, didn't have a job, and had $2,000 to my name. The first thing I did when I got to town, besides the obvious, get an apartment and everything, is I had heard about Gary Darwin's Magic Club meeting. Now, this is back in the 80s. There's no internet or anything, so it was much harder to find out. It took me about a month. But I finally found out they met Wednesday nights around 9 o'clock. They still do, by the way, 30 plus years later. So I walk in there, and there's Jimmy Grippo, Alan Ackerman, Michael Skinner, of course Gary, and all these guys I had read about 6 months ago when I was back in the Midwest. And they were very friendly. Now, these were magicians. They were not card cheats, but they showed me an incredible amount of magic and moves. And I went from like 10% to 90% in like 4 months. So every Wednesday night I was there, rain or shine. It was fantastic. Okay, well, I had met a lot of good cardmen through Gary Darwin's Magic Club meeting, but I was wondering who was absolutely the best with a deck of cards. And a lot of names came up, and some of these people I knew, but then one name I heard, I'd never heard before, and we'll just call him Mr. CC. So I went looking for this guy, and they told me he's kind of reclusive, it's going to be hard to find, but they thought he worked at a casino. So I went down to the casino, cut into a boss, and the boss said, you know, he used to work here, but he moved back east. Now, I can't tell you why, but I didn't believe the guy. So I kept searching, and there was a book club back in the 80s called Gambler's Book Club. Had thousands of books on gambling, magic, con games. So I'd go in there, and I made friends with a guy named Paul. Paul originally didn't work there, but he seemed to work there. He's there more than I was. And then he got a job there. So I said, Paul, if you ever hear of this guy, Mr. CC, that he's in the store, give me a call. And we had a picture of him. We weren't sure it was him, but I said, well, if a guy like this comes in, give me a call. What the hell? So about 6 weeks later, I get a phone call, and it's Paul. He goes, I think he's in here. Well, I was about 20 minutes from Gambler's Book Club, got there in about 8. And I saw Mr. CC, and yeah, pretty much a spot-on match from the photo we saw. So I walked up to him, and I asked him, are you Mr. CC? And he goes, depends on who's asking. So I told him who I was, which was just somebody interested in magic and card moves. And I remember him asking me a very kind of odd question. He said, do you have a car? I thought to myself, well, yeah, of course I have a car. I said, yes. He goes, good, follow me home. So I followed him about 15 minutes to his house. And I remember leaving there about 6 hours later. My head was spinning. He showed me so much stuff, I couldn't remember anything. Brilliant. So that's how I got my first introduction into what was really possible beating the game of blackjack. Well, from there I started practicing the moves, and I wanted to become a dealer. I was actually running out of money, and we were down, my girlfriend and I, down to about literally a week, and we were really thinking about moving back to the Midwest. Well, funny story, never been to California. Said, well, I want to go to California, especially the Magic Castle, which is all the great magicians perform there. And it just coincidentally happened that Mr. CC was going to be there at the same time, as we had kept in contact. So he said, you know, I'll get you into the Magic Castle. So we're talking and watching the shows, and my wife, not my wife, eventually my wife cuts into him while I was in the bathroom or something, said, you know, we're going to have to move back to the Midwest. Is there anything you can do? So the next day, or the following day after we get back from California, Mr. CC calls me and says, come on over. And he taught me to deal the game of blackjack in 2 days. On the third day, I had a job dealing blackjack at a little break-in joint in Las Vegas, Nevada. So I was on the game dealing, and I wasn't cheating at this first break-in joint, but I was looking at what could be done, thinking constantly, and practicing moves, especially shuffling, although I would nullify the stack by letting a normal person cut, and of course the stack would be gone. But it gave me a lot of practice, so every second I was dealing the game there, I was practicing moves and stuff. Not practicing, but going mentally through my head. What could be done, seeing the vulnerabilities, seeing what the bosses watch for, etc. So I lasted about 3 months at that break-in job, and then I moved up to a better casino on the Strip. And that's when I first started using some of the moves that I got good at and actually started cheating the game of blackjack. Okay, you know, like everybody, you do a bunch of moves in front of the mirror, and they're fun to do. But the real moves, the moves that get the money, the moves you're good at, call them the bread and butter moves, those are the moves you're going to use under fire at the blackjack game. And I had two that I used all the time. The first you saw was the flash. Very strong, very safe. We never, in my opinion, ever had any heat with that move. Never came close to getting caught. And the second move I used a lot was stacking the deck. Done in the hands of a professional, I think it's virtually impossible to detect, and it's extremely strong. In the rare cases the flash wasn't working out, just because you can get beat, believe it or not, with the flash. Stack a snapper once in a while, and we always had a winning session. And back when I was in shape, meaning shuffling the deck, I didn't have to look at my hands. I could do it virtually any time I wanted, and it was an absolute 100% winner. Now, that being said, we didn't do it all the time, because if a guy kept winning and winning and winning big amounts of money, that would produce heat. And that's obviously you don't want heat, but the biggest reason you don't want heat is because you're going to burn your player out, your agent. Then you're going to have to get another agent, and another, and another, and another. 5, 10, 20, 30, 50. And guaranteed one of those guys is going to get popped for something else. Maybe not a gambling crime, but something. And then he's going to play let's make a deal. And guess who he's going to make a deal for? Me. So I only had about 5 agents. They were all friends. I trusted them, and we never had a problem. One of the cool plays I was involved in that kind of made me was a play we called the River. We started out, I think there was 15 of us. There were 2 bosses down with us, I think 5 dealers, and the rest were players. Of course, we all pretended not to know each other. And this was somewhere not in Vegas. So we get down there, we get organized, and I'm one of the dealers. So I'm dealing, I'm mainly doing the flash and stacking the deck. And just by pure luck, all the other dealers got pulled up, not because they were suspicious, but because this casino would randomly polygraph the dealers, and none of them could pass. They didn't get popped, they just were told to hit the road. So I was the last dealer standing. So it was me, Mr. CC, one of the bosses, and that's it. And the funny thing is, the boss didn't even know what was going down. He said, I don't want to know, you just tell me what to do. And actually a smart move on his part. So there we were playing. I would deal, Mr. CC would win, and we probably beat that casino out of close to 100,000 over a few weeks. Now, eventually, no matter who you are and how good you are, they kind of gel to it. And I do know this for a fact. The last play we had everybody in the casino watching, because by that time Mr. CC was winning, you know, not just against me, but other dealers too were doing stuff to help them with the decks. But we had the eye in the sky, we had all the bosses, and unknown to me, 2 gaming agents on the table watching. They had no clue what we were doing. And I know this because after I got tapped out, new dealer came in, I started walking, I got another tap on my back, and it was gaming control. I said, I'd like to talk to you. So we go in the back room. The first thing they said is, you're giving Mr. CC, of course they didn't say CC, said, you're giving that guy whole card information. Right then and there, I knew they had no clue what we were doing, and I was just relaxed. And I said, no, I'm not giving him whole card information. And they asked, do you know him? I go, no. I mean, I've seen him in the casino. He's played and won, but I don't know him. And when they went to check that statement out, it was true, because we never had worked at the same casino, and there's no way they could do a background to see if I actually knew him. Long story short, nothing really happened. In fact, of course, Mr. CC couldn't play there anymore. He didn't get popped. He was just told, you're too lucky, and he couldn't play. So I had to deal on the square for about 2 weeks before I could quit the job. I did not enjoy dealing on the square. So that's an interesting story that after that, the way I handled myself in the cards, people knew that I could, not only handle the cards, but wouldn't crack under pressure. Here's another funny story, and the old adage, you never crack out a turn. So I'm dealing in this casino, been there a while, and I'm dealing the flash and stacking the cards. So one day, this boss, I think he was a shift boss, I saw him a lot, but we never really talked or anything. And he walks up to me and goes, how you doing, Flash? And right then my stomach went into my throat for a second, but I composed myself and said, I'm doing okay. He never said another word, and I went to deal the game. Now to this day, I don't think he knew I was dealing the Flash, but I don't know for sure. But he never cut into me and said, hey, you got a new partner. Not only did we have the moves down cold, but we always wanted to make every play look good. And so we used psychological techniques. Of course, one of the obvious ones is we didn't win a lot of money. We wanted to go for longevity. But some of the more specific ones is I always thought it'd be stronger if the boss, who wasn't down with the play, sent me to my agent rather than my agent come to the table. So one way I did this, at one particular casino, you would deal game 1, go on break, then go to game 2, go on break, game 3, go on break, and go back to game 1, and repeat that throughout the night. So the first time I'd be assigned to a game, I would be able to easily figure out what game I'd be at what time later on that night. So let's just say I knew at 10 p.m. I'd be on at game 7. So when I went on break, I'd go up and make a phone call. Back then there weren't cell phones, on a pay phone. And I'd call my agent, but I wouldn't say, hey, I'm going to be, 10 o'clock on game 7. I'd disguise it just in case. And at this time in my life, I was playing racquetball. So I would say on the recorder, because he would never answer, he'd pick it up later, he'd get the message, say, let's play a little racquetball. How about 10 p.m. tomorrow, which really meant 10 p.m. tonight, at court 7, which meant 10 p.m. tonight, I'll be on game 7. So he would come in about 9:45 and start playing against a normal dealer and start betting and increase his bets. So by the time I got there 10 o'clock, he'd be betting what we would bet throughout the session. So it didn't look like he jumped his bet when I came in. So that was just one way we used psychological ploys to make the casino seem like we were just squares, I, the dealer, and my agent, a player. Now another way we did that, having the dealer, or the casino send me, the dealer, to my agent, is the rubber band. What they would do at the beginning of the game or the night, the bosses would write down the dealer's names, and a rubber band would be the marker. So let's say the last dealer sent on break was Anderson, and the next one was Smith when we came back. So it seemed like impossible to manipulate this system, but I was able to do that by looking at, when I'd go on break, in the old days you'd have the tokes in your pocket and you'd dump them into a receptacle right by what we call the rubber band. So I'd look and see the first dealer that was going to be taken out when I came back from break. So let's say his name's Smith. I'd see which game Smith is on. As I passed Smith's table, I just brush my hair. That would signal my agent that's where I'm coming back to in 15 or 20 minutes, depending on how long my break is. So then my agent would be sitting at the table as I came back off break, and the boss would look, say, okay, Marks, you take out Smith. I would go take Smith out. There's the boss who's not down with the play sending me to my agent. much stronger than my agent coming to me. One question I get a lot is, why did I stop? Well, a couple different reasons. Number one, I had a good run, and I figured if I continued, eventually I would get popped. Yeah, circumstances out of my control. And number two, honestly, believe it or not, I was kind of getting bored with it. And if I'm not 110% in something, I know it's time to get out. And I wanted to be able to say 20, 30 years later, I never got popped. And I can say that, and it's the truth. A lot of these moves are old, but which ones do I think might still work today with the sophisticated surveillance system? I still am a big fan of stacking the deck. In the hands of an expert, it's virtually impossible. Now, of course, you wouldn't want to stack every hand, etc., but I think you could still get that move on. And the nice thing about stacking the deck, too, you don't have anything on you. You don't have computers, you don't have cell phones, so they have to be able to nail the move itself. Some stuff I wouldn't do that you saw on this tape, any of the chip moves, because the camera resolution, as you saw in the videos here, is too good. Also the flash, I'd be a little worried about that. You know, the camera eye is much better than the human eye, especially back then. I didn't realize, because I was in my 20s, that people in their 50s didn't have the eyesight I had, so the bosses had no shot at seeing this stuff. But today, with the good cameras, I'd be very leery of that. The mucking, also I'd be leery of, because there's just certain moves that muckers can't disguise. You know, you got to go back and forth, and then if you leak just a hair anymore with those cameras. So bottom line, what I would do if I had to do it would be stacking the deck. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of these videos and you can use some of this stuff in your gambling demonstrations. If you want to contact me, I have my contact information right below. Thanks again.